Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the December meeting of the Montgomery County Civic Federation. My name is Alan Bowser. I'm the secretary, and in the absence of our president, Cheryl Gannon, who can't be here this evening, I'll be conducting the regular business before our program on transportation and pedestrian safety. So the first order of business is the approval of the agenda, which was printed on page 2 of the newsletter. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been first and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Next order of business is the approval of the minutes from the November 10th meeting of the Civic Federation. They were printed on page 8 of the newsletter. Entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the November meeting. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 The minutes are approved. The next order of business is the treasurer's report. Jerry Garson is our treasurer. Jerry?
We operate on a fiscal year from July 1 so far through December 8th. We've received $1,473 worth of dues. We've had expenses of $1,174, giving us a net income for the period of $299. Most of our expenses have been the website, which is $286, meeting expense of $488, and memberships of $400. Our current bank balance is $5,987. If there are any questions, let me know.
No, thank you very much, Jerry. This is a time in our meeting that we ask anybody if they have any announcements they'd like to make for the whole group. I would just mention on our behalf that we will have an in-person social gathering on January 11th, 2026 at a place and time to be determined. So mark your calendars for January 11th, 2026 at a place to be determined. I'm going to turn the program over to Jerry, and thank you all for being here this evening. Jerry?
I am Jerry Garson, the treasurer and chair of the Transportation Committee. For tonight's program, I'd like to welcome Chris Conklin, the director of Montgomery County Department of Transportation, and Wade Holland, the manager of the Vision Zero program in the Office of the County Executive. We see that according to INREX, the average driver in region lost 70 hours of traffic in 2025. The DC area ranks 19th worst city for traffic congestion in the world. This is a 13% increase from 2024. And I'd like now welcome Chris Conklin, who will be the first speaker.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting us tonight. It's always a pleasure to talk with our friends in the Civic Federation. I don't have slides to deliver. I'm just going to give an overview of major activities occurring in the department right now. The Department of Transportation is one of the larger departments in county government, operating the ride-on bus system, maintaining our streets and roads, and operating and maintaining the parking inventory in Silver Spring, Wheaton, and Bethesda. We also have a large capital program, which is roughly equivalent to the operating program, investing in safety projects, new roads, and new transit projects around the county. In terms of the activities that are principally at mind right now in the Department of Transportation, we're concluding the annual leafing program, which should be wrapping up in the next week or so, where we collect leaves in a district within the county that's bounded roughly by the ICC and US 29 headed over towards the Potomac River. If you're familiar with that program and participate in it, those leaves and other yard debris are collected and composted out in Dickerson and turned into a full fertilizer product and then resold for people to use in gardening and other purposes. We're also unfortunately overlapping leafing with snow operations, given the earlier than typical onset of winter weather. You've probably noticed the trucks out there not plowing yet, but salting in the last snow event that we had, and we are monitoring weather on a routine basis, as we expect we might even have some more adverse weather later this week. Those are the two of the main activities of our Highway Services Division, which is the second largest division in MCDOT. When it's not leafing season or snow season, those crews are mowing, maintaining pavement, and maintaining drainage systems. So it's a very efficient operation among that staff that's working on maintaining the highway and street network in Montgomery County. In terms of parking, we are currently having meetings with the various urban districts and chamber organizations in each of the parking lot districts, so Wheaton, Silver Spring, and Bethesda. The parking lot districts, as you may know, are fully supported by parking fees and parking fines. They are not supported by tax funds at this time. So we are reviewing those cash flows and working to develop the upcoming budget for the parking operation that will include the physical maintenance of all the parking facilities, the operation, security, and cleaning services that those facilities require. So we'll be seeing what those finances look like and be putting forward our recommendations for the parking budget later this spring. As we move through the rest of the organization, our transit division has a community forum tonight on a new service model to serve the Olney and east of Olney area, Sherwood High School, Blake High School, down to the US 29 program with a ride-on flex type service, which has been in operation in Rockville and Glenmont for a couple years. This is to fill a gap in coverage that was left with the reorganization of the bus services this summer when Metro ended some service in that part of the county. So there's a public forum going on now, and we expect to launch that new service in January of this upcoming year. I mentioned the service changes that happened this summer. There was a realignment of Metro bus and ride-on services in Montgomery County where a number of routes were changed and service was swapped between the county and Metro. So that all went relatively successfully. There were these gaps that I mentioned. The one in the East County that this flex zone is looking to fill. And there were some other customers that got lost direct service between Kensington and Friendship Heights. And we have not figured out a way to restore that direct service, but there were a number of other changes made between Metrobus and the county in that area. These are the first implementations out of the Ride on Reimagined plan, which was published late last year, and look to institute a number of different types of transit services in the county. Some of them connecting better east-west across the county. As some of the folks were talking at the beginning of the meeting, that it's generally easier and you have more options to travel north and south in Montgomery County than east and west. That was also coupled with the implementation of fare-free, zero fare system on ride-on. So you can now ride all of the ride-on services without paying. You still have to pay for Metrobus, but the county-operated services are free. It's something I know some folks here had advocated for a long time. We made the decision to do it this time because there was a significant investment needed in the fare collection technology to be consistent with the regional systems. And given where we were in collecting revenue, it no longer made sense to make that large capital investment, which would have taken many years to recoup that investment with the level of revenue that's collected as fares. Continuing to look at the traffic division and its operations, there are a number of projects to install additional street lighting around the county. One notable place is on the US 29 corridor to fill gaps in street lighting that are there. Work going on in several of the central business districts to improve lighting and work to focus on aligning the lighting installations with locations where we have traffic safety challenges that Wade will talk a little bit more about that in his presentation. There's also a lot of work going on to improve pedestrian crossings on county roads. A lot of our challenges with pedestrian safety are related to people having long distance between crossing opportunities on high-speed multi-lane roads. And the traffic division has been working hard to improve or shorten the distance between those crossing opportunities. There's also been a change in the executive regulation for speed humps, where speed humps can now more easily be installed in communities. The speed threshold between the observed speed and the speed limit has been narrowed so that you don't have to have excessive speeding to qualify for speed humps, but speeding in general will qualify for speed humps. The traffic volume restrictions were removed from that regulation, and the neighborhood concurrence standard was dropped to 70% in that regulation to try to make it easier for people to qualify for speed hump installation. The traffic division is also, as you know, operates the traffic signal system around the county. We've been working to improve the dissemination of alerts from that system. So if you've signed up for Alert Montgomery, you may get notices about when there are disruptions on the street network. Those disruptions are reported through that traffic management system, then distributed through Alert Montgomery. And we've been working with our colleagues in police and fire and rescue to get better communication of traffic events that might result in disruptions on the network so that the information that you get through Alert Montgomery is more timely and more accurate, and you can plan then your travel around those alerts. As we continue to talk about our divisions, Joe Mogas, I saw he's on the meeting here as well. He runs the Transportation Engineering Division. That division is responsible for assessing bridge condition, repairing bridges, and implementing our other capital projects. The majority of our capital projects are in the transit arena right now. We just got notice yesterday that we are expecting a grant award in February for the Veers Mill Road bus rapid transit project, which would provide an 80% federal match to the county's investment in that project, which also has a large number of Vision Zero sidewalk and bikeway elements to it. So we're expecting that project will move forward with full construction at the beginning of 2027. It will take us until then to acquire property and move utilities on that corridor. We've also entered the 355 bus rapid transit project into the federal funding process, and it has been submitted for rating, and we're undergoing the environmental screening for that project at this time. You may be aware that there was an agreement between MDOT, SHA, and the county for funding of several transit projects through the American Legion Bridge I-270 project. Those agreements have been updated as MDOT SHA has reduced the limits of that project. When it was first conceived, that project went from I-370 to the George Washington Memorial Parkway. They're now looking at a phase of that project that is from Westlake Terrace near Westfield Montgomery Mall to the American Legion Bridge. So we've revised all of those agreements for transit funding that are associated with the American Legion Bridge replacement and have been working or helping the state apply for federal bridge program grants that might help that to move forward. But there's still no specific timeline for when that project would advance, nor a specific set of design recommendations for what that project will look like. Other major activities in the capital program for our engineering division are the Burtonsville Access Road, which is now in construction. It's a link between the Burtonsville Elementary site and Old Columbia Pike. That project is in construction now. We are getting ready to construct the Bowie Mill Bikeway, which is from Olney down to the ICC corridor, where you can then get on the ICC path and find your way to the Shady Grove Metro Station. And there are a lot of other level of effort projects in the transportation engineering division. Storm drain and drainage assistance being one of them. If residents have concerns about drainage from the right of way onto their property, we are able to provide some technical evaluation and assistance for that. The other thing I'd like to mention in that arena of storm drain, not that it's directly storm drain, but the county has been working on a comprehensive flood management plan. And the first phase of analysis for that flood management plan is now available on the Department of Environmental Protection's website, where they've done a bunch of hazard analysis in the Sligo Creek watershed, so that if you're curious about what flooding levels or implications may look like in that watershed and some measures you can take as a property owner to protect your property, you can go find that information on DEP's website. In our highway program, we also have repaving. We have been seeing increases in material and labor costs in the repaving program, and we're hoping to identify additional resources that can be made available so that we can continue to resurface streets at the same level that we have been and keep pace with the deterioration of those facilities. Right now, our funding level is slightly below the level it would need to be so that we can maintain consistent pavement condition across the county, and we're hoping to get that brought up to the level where we are not seeing deterioration in the system-wide pavement condition. Those programs also do sidewalk repair and curb and gutter repair around the county. And we're seeking the same sort of funding to be able to continue to keep those systems in a state of good repair. There are a number of sidewalk projects underway. The focus at the moment is on the Purple Line, pedestrian and bike priority area, trying to advance sidewalk connections and bikeway connections to the Purple Line stations before they open in 2027 or 2027. And we are working closely with our colleagues at the state to implement the county-funded projects that are part of the Purple Line, which is the Capitol Crescent Trail, reopening the new Bethesda Metro South entrance, the Green Trail in Silver Spring. And that work is all proceeding. It's been a difficult summer as they've been doing the track installation through downtown Silver Spring. A lot of that work is now completed, and they're working more in the dedicated right-of-way between Bethesda and Silver Spring, so it's a little less visible to the public, but they're still making progress. If you've noted in the news, they have received all the train sets in the yard in Prince George's County and are beginning the testing and commissioning of the rail cars, and they should be moving out of the yard soon and onto some of the track for testing. So it's been a very busy time in the Department of Transportation. I think we've made a lot of good progress in improving the quality of service that we're delivering for our residents. Our number one priority is to make sure that those frontline services are delivered at the highest quality we can, so that daily transit service that the majority of our workforce works hard to deliver, and those highway maintenance services that directly affect the quality of the facilities and the quality of the landscape around those facilities. So those are our first priority, to make sure those are working hard. And then second, after that, is to make sure that we're making all the investments we need to so that it's as safe as the system can be. And I won't steal all of Wade's thunder, but he's going to be talking about that Vision Zero action plan soon. And then to make other investments that improve people's mobility choices through better transit operations, improve access to development opportunity through new roads, and to expand our walking and biking network in the county. And along with that, we work every day to coordinate our program with that of the State Highway Administration that maintains a smaller but principal street network in the county, the numbered routes that you're all familiar with, and also to coordinate all of that work with Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, Metro or WMATA, that is operating the regional transit system, and all that coordination and planning that goes on to make sure those things are done in a manner that makes sense. So that's my presentation. I know I had seen that there's a few questions people had and wanted to talk about. So we're happy to do that now, or if you'd prefer to have Wade give his presentation, we could take questions jointly at the end of that if you like.
What do you think, Jerry? Questions after Wade's presentation?
I think we can do questions after Wayne's presentation because he might actually answer some of the questions that people have. So I'd like to introduce Wade Holland, who is the manager of the Vision Zero program in the office of Mark Elrich, the county executive's office.
All right, thank you, Jerry. Yeah, and to follow up with Chris's presentation, we're going to go a little bit deeper, not only just for what MCDOT is doing to make our roads safer by design, but also some of our enforcement efforts, as well as work done by our local and state partners. So 1 second. I do need permission to share the slides.
I've got your slides up, if that's okay.
Yeah, that works too. Yeah, if you want to bring those and make those full screen too, that works as well.
Can you see the slides?
Yeah. And I'll also put a link into the chat. So if folks there are links in the slides themselves. So I will send you all the link if you want to look at them yourself or have a copy. Those are in this chat as well. Next slide, please. So what is Vision Zero? So we're largely, the question is, why is it called Vision Zero? What's this Vision Zero all about? Vision Zero is the countywide program to eliminate serious injuries and fatalities from our roadways. And our goal year is by 2030. And this is something, the idea of Vision Zero was adopted initially by the country of Sweden, moved into their neighbors in Norway, and then slowly spread across to many communities across the US. Montgomery County is one of the first county governments back in 2016 to adopt it as a resolution. And then our first action plan came out in late 2017, taking effect in 2018. So with Vision Zero, we're not trying to eliminate every crash. What Vision Zero tells us is that there are things that we can do to make the road safer by design. So when those crashes happen, because we want to account for human behaviors, right? People are still going to be human. They're going to have people interacting on the road with each other, and sometimes those people make mistakes. Our goal with our enforcement, with our roadway design, as well as our outreach and education, is to say if we can lower the energy of that crash so people can either have minor injuries or less, that's our goal in Vision Zero. So even in the perfect Vision Zero world, there would still be crashes, but we really want to take away the energy in those crashes to make sure that people survive those crashes. Next slide, please. Alan, do you have the slides? Are you
Now
controlling?
I've got the slides and it's just not moving to the next one. Let's see if that works. Sorry.
All right.
There we go.
Yep. So let's give you a high level overview tonight. What's been going on in Vision Zero and what's kind of in the pipeline for this fiscal year. Next slide, please. So these next two slides are, as mentioned, we have our plan on a fiscal year basis, which is July 1st through June 30th. So this kind of gives you an idea of what do we do throughout the year for Vision Zero. One of our key aspects of Vision Zero, as Director Conklin mentioned earlier, is trying to create more safe places for people to cross. This county was built with the idea of having these highways that get you downtown to DC as fast as possible. And part of that was reducing the friction between you and the road getting downtown with, really having traffic controls about traffic, not necessarily always about safety, but we keep on adding more traffic signals as well as beacons on the road to provide those safer places to cross. Question we get is like, what, only six? To give you an idea of the cost of these, so a traffic signal, if it's four-way intersection with multiple lanes, you're looking at least a $300,000, sometimes up to $500,000 investment just for that intersection. So actually one of our biggest investments beyond some of the large capital projects in terms of we call our level of effort or things we do every year is actually these investments in safer crossings. We also have a sidewalk program. We usually do between 5.5 to upwards of 6.5 miles of new sidewalk each year. And as Chris mentioned, there's a lot of bikeways in the design, and 4 were under construction as the close of the fiscal year. Next slide, please. A big part of my work plan each year, and we're gearing up for that now, is going down to Annapolis and trying to advocate for more safety bills, either in terms of holding drivers accountable or trying to find ways that we can make sure that we can use all the tools in our toolbox that will make it safer for people getting in and around Montgomery County. We had sometimes in Annapolis, even if the best idea, thought it all through, it still takes quite a few years sometimes to get a bill passed. We had a couple big victories last year, especially around automated traffic enforcement, where we are now able to study and potentially use speed cameras on what we call our high injury network. These are the roads that are identified through data-driven analysis of all the roads in Montgomery County that have the highest density of serious and fatal crashes. We found in our review that state law was forbidding us from using speed cameras on 60% of our high injury network roads. So we went with our partners in the Montgomery County delegation. We've worked the bill for, I think, 3 years in a row in different ways, and we're able to get that bill passed. And so we'll actually be able to continue to use speed cameras where they're warranted on some of our most dangerous roadways. There are certain roads we're already allowed to use those on, and I've been starting to kind of track and do some pre-post studies, and we are still seeing that those newer cameras we've been implementing post-COVID are having an impact as they've been installed. Next slide, please. So where can you see all this information? We have our own websites, montgomerycountymd.gov. Vision Zero. If you want to see what's planned for this year on all of our 45 action items, you can click on Plan and Reports, and you can see the current fiscal year plan. And down the bottom, we have an archive going back to the 2002 Blue Ribbon Panel on pedestrian safety if you want to see the kind of evolution of safety in Montgomery County. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, a little hard to see on this slide, but you can also go onto the website and see these, which high energy network locations are near you. You can see that they're a mix of our larger roads for the county, like a Shady Grove Road, Randolph Road, Cherry Hill Road, our state roadways, like parts of Georgia Avenue, Germantown Road, parts of Rockville Pike, parts of Frederick Road. Really in this concentrated areas, the Wheaton Glenmont area, parts of Rockville into Gaithersburg, and then up into Germantown are where those most dangerous roadways we've identified that need the intervention. And the good news is we've been working with our state partners as well as county partners on these roadways. And while the overall number of serious and fatal crashes is not down to what we would like to see, we have been seeing on these roadways that we've identified and have been doing interventions on, we're driving down serious injury and fatalities at a higher rate than the rest of the network. So we are getting those interventions in, and where those interventions are going in, we are seeing change in those serious injury and fatality crashes. So to give you an idea of what we're doing currently on the high injury network, we have completed our audits of the top 10 county routes. Now we're moving further into a design and construction on some of these priority routes. There is design going on for Belpre Road between Georgia Avenue and Lay Hill Road. We've done one round of safety programs in terms of adding new pedestrian hybrid beacons, and there will be a new traffic signal this year on that road. But there's additional things we want to do around the kind of how the shared use turn lanes and some of the other movements on that roadway work, and those are in design. Cherry Hill Road Bikeway, that's between East Randolph Road and FDA Boulevard. Crystal Rock Drive between Father Hurley Boulevard and Germantown Road. Again, some of the smaller stuff has been done. Looking to advance design further on that. Montgomery Village Avenue between Mid-County Highway and, sorry, this is the separate part. There's Montgomery Village Avenue changes roadway ownership at Mid-County Highway. So between closer where the old Lake Forest Mall was, there is a state highway project there that is doing a safety program between Montgomery Village Avenue and also when 124 turns into Mid-County Highway. For north of Mid-County Highway, where it becomes a county road, we are currently in construction of some safety improvements on that stretch. Right now, it's doing some of the curb gutter and some of the sidewalk ramps are being upgraded. And eventually, we'll also have a change to some of the crossings there. There is some right-of-way impacts that we need to deal with, but those will eventually have some more beacons along Montgomery Village Avenue to provide more safe crossings to and from some bus stops that are identified during the audit. Some other projects, again, a lot of work being done around Purple Line and future Purple Line stations. That includes around Piney Branch Road. Even though it's a state road, it is being led by Montgomery County DOT. And that will provide some new separated bike facilities that also connect into the bike lanes that are being constructed by the State Highway Administration as part of the Purple Line. Another project that's also on a state road is University Boulevard West. They had a hearing, I think it was last month or maybe it was October, between Georgia Avenue and Colesville Road to do some kind of looking at the corridor and finding projects that the state can do without utility impacts, without really having to do any right-of-way acquisition, things they can do to make the roadway safer in a couple of years versus a long planning timeline that could for some sort of larger project. Next slide, please. So I mentioned here for construction projects, I mentioned Montgomery Village Avenue for the county portion. We also have New Hampshire Avenue, which started construction this summer. That's a state highway project under their pedestrian safety action plan. We also have Spencerville Road. This is a quick build project that along to the west of Old Columbia Pike, where there's speed cushions installed, although we did talk to the county council today. It sounds like they're not super fans of these, but we have seen the speed humps done in other parts of the state by SHA, and they do have pretty significant impact on driver speed. So we'll see how those work and any modifications that need to happen with our state partners. And as Director Conklin mentioned, Veers Mill Road It is, primarily a bus rapid transit project, but there is a significant multi-million-dollar effort to bring some of the pedestrian facilities that are some are missing and some are not to the level we would want to build them now up to date. And they will have new sidewalks, new shared use path, which a shared use path is just a kind of a wider sidewalk that's for people biking as well as walking along the corridor coming in and out of Wheaton. So we've been talking with the community. We've identified in on safety audits that there has been a need for sidewalks and upgraded sidewalks on Veers Mill Road for years. The cost of those sidewalks are pretty ginormous given the need for potentially additional land as well as the slope issues and grade issues. So having to be able for DOT to take the bus rapid transit project and build in some of the pedestrian bicycle safety projects, it's a huge win if we can get all the funding available for that, because it was one of those few chances we would have to make this roadway safer in a way that can actually make a difference rather than some of the smaller stuff we've already done that is making some impact, but this is that chance to really make this roadway look like we want it to look under a Vision Zero paradigm. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, the new signal and beacon projects, we've installed at least 64 since Vision Zero started. And as you go back to the slide for the high energy network, we looked at those areas in Wheaton, Glenmont, and Germantown, where there is a lot of need. You can see that's really where we've done a lot of our focus, not only just for the county DOT, but also our partners at the State Highway Administration to start breaking up some of those huge blocks that we had along Georgia Avenue, Connecticut Avenue, Veers Mill Road, parts of Randolph Road as well, to really make those roads so people don't feel like they have to walk out of their way, sometimes a half mile or more, just to get a red light so they can cross those 4 to 6 lanes of traffic. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, the Purple Line and Bikeway projects. So obviously the state is in charge of building the Purple Line, some of the safety projects, but there's also a huge effort underway by the county to make connections to the Purple Line safer by design. So the Purple Line is overall 82% complete with service starting winter 2027. Utility relocations are 97% complete. The Capitol Crescent Trail is 63% complete, and they're still showing a timeline of spring 2026 to open that while the Purple Line is undergoing testing. The Metropolitan Branch Trail, which goes south of the Silver Spring Metro Center, is under construction by MCDOT to go over Georgia Avenue with final paving underway. There's also studies for Flower Avenue, Carroll Avenue, and Piney Branch in the Langley Park, Tacoma Park area. Next slide, please. Bus rapid transit and bikeway projects. So here's an example of one of the bus only and also bike lanes that are on the University Boulevard West. That was installed in March 2024. Georgia Avenue was initially a pilot during the red line shutdown in the summer of 2024, and those lanes have now been made permanent, but they don't have the red paint at this point. There is some red paint up in the Shady Grove, Darnestown area that's part of the ride-on extra pink and lime routes that provide the curb lanes now are available for buses in that area. Veers Mill Road is also, we mentioned some of the safety projects. The design is finalized, and you'll see them now moving utilities along Veers Mill Road in anticipation of construction for that project. And Chris kind of highlighted some of the other ones, so I won't go over those again. Next slide. Moving on, we have our Safe Routes to School program. So we do at least 10 to 20, what we call walkability studies. So you can see here on the right side of the screen, the Montgomery County Public Schools identifies the areas where students are not assigned busing. So we call those the walk areas, the walk sheds, walk zones. Take your pick of way you want to describe them. We usually say walk sheds for our program, where staff go ahead and identify within the walk shed what are the traffic controls, how are people actually using the road, doing observation studies, what are the placement of crossing guards, which crossing guards are funded and placed by the Montgomery County Police, and looking at the sidewalks, ramps, all those kinds of things to do a overall inventory of the walk shed and walking routes to see where there are potential opportunities to make those routes safer by design. We are about a little over halfway, so 58% through of all schools that have walk sheds and are outside of municipalities. And as those projects go forward and the recommendations are finalized, they will take those recommendations, cost them out, and then if there are any sort of larger non-maintenance things, staff will also come back for a separate meeting with the community to talk about implementing some of those larger, medium to larger items. Next slide, please. So these are the list of 26 walkability studies. You can see here, as a picture on the right, is staff doing a back to school night where they are getting feedback from the parents during a back to school night in the fall. We are doing 10 elementary schools, 3 middle schools, and 2 high schools. As you can see, those are all kind of part of the same cluster. So even if we're doing 15 walkability studies, obviously there's a lot of overlap because of the way that the schools feed into the larger schools. So we kind of look at those all holistically in a group, in a cluster, and make those recommendations at the same time. Next slide, please. So just some examples of what some of the school projects may look like in a neighborhood walking area. So this could be, upgrading the crosswalks to high visibility crosswalks, doing what we call a bump out, which is extending the intersection out a little bit. So you kind of you narrow the roadway, which makes people want to turn slower, go through the road slower. We have also done what we call a pedestrian island. So this will be normally on a roadway that's not divided. You'll have a concrete around the crosswalk that gives pedestrians, if they wanted to take a 2-stage crossing, they can, but also provides better visibility for the pedestrians that are crossing, and it also narrows the roadway to get drivers to slow down. There can also be changes in the traffic control in neighborhoods. So the example here is changing a T intersection from a side street stop only partial stop to a full traffic control. And a question we often get is, well, why don't you just put stop signs everywhere? There is a lot of behavioral science built in some of the examinations for stop signs. We do find in nationwide studies that if there is a strong imbalance of either pedestrians, any traffic from the side streets, say there's cars or pedestrians, people, they may be good about stopping initially, but if they don't have any friction from the sides, they may actually start continuing to violate that stop sign over time. So that's one of the things when people go, well, hey, I want safety, I want that stop sign, that there can be a reason why that stop sign is there, because if there's unwarranted stop signs, that potentially can create new traffic and safety hazards. Next slide, please. So that's kind of the build out and the engineering side of Safe Routes to School. We also have a school engagement education. So these are some of the programs that we offer as part of our Safe Routes to School. We have Walking Wednesdays, where every Wednesday staff go out to different schools in the morning, and we greet parents and walkers and have a kind of little fun party out front to celebrate walking to school. We have bike rodeos, which teaches young people, this is mostly elementary age school, how to safely navigate the roadways. What do the stop signs mean? What do the yield signs mean? How do you do hand signals when you're biking to make sure that they know the rules of the road and how to be safe while biking or rolling. We also provide guidance on the website. So if you're interested in how to do, for example, a walking school bus, or want to have kind of your own kind of Safe Routes School chapter within your school, we have guidance on how to do that. We have one whole FTE that does this for the entire county. So we always want to provide people with train the trainer type materials to make sure that they can be leaders in their community and provide that safety for their students. We also have what we call our Vision Zero Youth Ambassadors program. We just closed our applications on Friday. We had over 100 applicants for this year. We take usually between 30 to 40 students. These are high school students who work with us for 5 months, starting in January, and they learn about Vision Zero monthly with kind of education, and every week they work towards their capstone project, which is Safety Day in May. Next slide, please. Moving on to the enforcement side of Vision Zero. So we have an automated enforcement expansion plan, which usually means more sites and new technologies. You can see on the right side of your screen, this is an example of a technology we piloted with a vendor last summer, or I guess 2 summers now ago. This is 2024. Um, that uses cameras to detect whether someone is violating the Maryland hands-free law. One thing we learned from doing this study is some people seem to think hands-free law means not having their hands on the wheel. No, we want your hands on the wheel. We want to make sure that your hands are not on a device and being distracting. In the sites that were sampled by the vendor as part of this pilot, they estimated almost 20% of drivers were distracted by a mobile phone during this time. So that was a little disturbing, but we took this to Annapolis. It wasn't successful getting through Annapolis last year. I so far don't think we'll take this bill up again this year, but we'll still continue to look at how we can refine and make sure that it keeps people off their cell phones, but also meets some of the concerns that people have about automated enforcement. Other technology that is being looked at, you'll see starting soon in the city of Tacoma Park, use of automated enforcement for people violating stop signs. They'll be used in school zones in Tacoma Park. There is a local bill currently sponsored that may expand that to the cities of Gaithersburg and Rockville. Those bills were heard last week. And as of October 1st of this year, the state law changed that affects the fines. So no longer is an automated speed camera ticket $40. That is now a graduated fine, can go up to $425 based on your driver's speed. So the base fine from 12 to 15 miles an hour is still 40, but the faster you're going, the higher the fine, and that's statewide. Next slide, please. Some more about our outreach and events. Next slide, please. So I mentioned a little earlier, Vision Zero Youth Ambassador program. It's a picture of our group from setting up for Safety Day while we're completely tired by working all day. But yeah, great group. It's a fun program we do each year. Next slide, please. If you're interested, we mentioned bike rodeos. Those are for our elementary students. But if you're curious about learning how to ride a bike or use an e-scooter, we have programming for that. This is run through MCDOT's Commuter Services program. These classes are popular. They sell out pretty much right when we have them, but you can go there. They have a bike in a parking lot with instructors, and a good chunk of people kind of start to pedal by the end of the first class. So if you're interested and want to learn more about how to safely navigate Montgomery County on bike, those are some are mostly reduced costs for Montgomery County residents. Next slide, please. We've also kicked off our holiday alcohol task force. So we want to make sure that it's not only about making sure we arrest people when they're driving impaired. We want to make sure people have the resources and know, because in Montgomery County, you have taxis, you have Uber, you have Lyft, you have your buddy phone on speed dial. There's never a reason you should be behind a wheel impaired. So we want to make sure that during our holiday alcohol task force, yes, we're letting people know that officers are out, during those high drinking periods, looking to arrest folks. But we also want to make sure people have the resources. So we've also worked with our partners in the alcohol beverage service to create, this was an example of a coaster that we had made in past years. We now have a magnet that we give to licensees, so your bars and restaurants, that has information that they can use the QR code to provide someone a ride home, or make sure that they can provide their patrons with the number for a local taxi service, or during the sober ride ways, which we'll have coming up soon. There are discounts for using Lyft that people can use to make sure that maybe they didn't make a plan, but they can make sure they get a safe ride home. Next slide. In terms of crash data, we have a lot of resources that are available either from the county directly or from the state. The example here on the right is from our statewide fatal crash dashboard. As of this week, we have 38 fatal crashes with 39 fatalities in the county. That is slightly below last year, but it's still above what we had pre-COVID. And you can see right there the number of suspected impairment crashes is 18. We are still seeing an increase in crashes involving impairments that exceeds what we had pre-COVID. So that's one of the things that we're really trying to hammer in our post-COVID reality is how are we ways we can properly address throughout all of our systems and government as well as the nonprofit sector to really change what has happened around impairment or uh, driving impaired and leading to fatal crashes in the county. Next slide. All right. Well, thank you all very much. I know it's a lot of slides to go through at almost 8 o'clock at night, but happy to take any questions you have.
This is Jerry Garson. If anyone would like to ask questions, please raise your hand on through chat. We'll call on you. I do have a couple of questions that I've received in advance. The first one is going to be for Chris Conklin. Could the county institute a program that once a month each street would have a street sweeper clean the curbs where there are curbs to help reduce flooding of clogged storm water drains, like on the first day of the month on one side of the street and like the 14th day of the month on the other side? We understand if there's Saturdays and Sundays, it would be roughly 9 or 10 times a month, a year, to really clean the street, the curbs.
Well, anything's possible with resources, but it's not something that we're currently funded to be able to do. There is a street sweeping program. I believe it's twice a year that's related to water quality more than it is to keeping the drainage system clear on a weekly basis. It would be quite expensive to have a full circuit of the county on a monthly basis. So yes, it's possible, but it's not terribly likely unless people were looking to have a specific fee, much like the leafing fee for that service, and it would be relatively expensive to operate. It's not a bad idea, and in some other denser urban areas, that is sort of the norm to have monthly street sweeping, but we don't have the same level of trash accumulation or other debris accumulation that you might see in those cities. So it's not something that's immediately on the horizon, but if it's something your membership is interested in, it certainly would be worth talking to executive staff or council members when budget proposals are being put together.
I'd like to call on Elizabeth Joyce for the next question.
Yes, thank you so much. My question is in the chat, and it's a bit long-winded, but I live on Tacoma Avenue in Silver Spring, which used to be a lovely residential street, and now, because of actions of the State Highway Administration, it is a commuter speed course twice a day. There was supposed to be a traffic light at Piney Branch and Ritchie Avenue. Piney Branch is a state road. Ritchie Avenue is a county street. And unfortunately, the State Highway Administration decided to save money and put in a four-way stop, resulting in a huge backup of commuters every single day. For about 3 years, these commuters have chosen to speed down our street, and neither the county nor the state will do anything about it. And DOT refused after putting in a small testing device for a very short time, which anyone could see, to declare that our street was not eligible for speed humps. Now, I know that there is a new policy, but we need help and we're not getting it from anyone, and it's extremely frustrating because it's dangerous, and we would like to know what to do about it.
Yeah, you're right. There's a new speed hump process. When did you last seek these speed humps?
I believe it was a couple of years ago. I did not get any help. Tacoma Park is putting in, I believe, cameras. And we understand that it's not within the capacity of the county police to patrol our street every day. But in front of my house, cars go by, about 50 cars in 15 minutes, going between 30 and probably 45 miles an hour.
And this is
And
Tacoma Park Avenue.
we don't get
What's
any
the name
help.
of the street again?
Pardon me?
What was the name of the street?
Tacoma Avenue. It's the street that Montgomery College is on, but we're on the other side of Philadelphia.
Okay.
And it's really, it's everybody's terribly worried about their children. Nobody will go out in rush hour in particular because it's so dangerous. People almost get wiped out at the stop signs and no one will do anything.
If you want to contact us at traffic ops
Yeah.
at montgomerycountymd.gov. We can initiate a new study under the new speed hump regulation.
Okay, well, I have the email that I tried a few years ago and I got nowhere. But, I really appreciate your openness to this and I can't tell you how urgent it is.
Yeah, and if you want to copy our director's office on that too, we can be sure we follow up on it.
Do we have your email?
I
We'll
will
share it generally.
I will put it
Okay,
in the
thank you.
chat.
Thank you so much. This is just really a very scary situation.
I'd like to call on Joel Titlebaum next.
Can you hear me? This is Joel Titlebaum.
Yes.
Good. Director Conklin and Vision Zero coordinator Holland, I really appreciate this session. I put two chat items in for both of you to look at. One is more general, asking how best to work with MC.dot offices engineers like traffic ops to achieve community goals for our streets and safety of our, both for vehicles and for pedestrians, bikers. In particular, again, one has to ask particular questions to get particular answers. There has been a problem at the Littonsville Place Bridge junction with Littonsville Road. That is a long-standing problem. Very recent attempts to change it have made it worse. And MC.dot had to literally revise its entire stop sign and lane width with slips from limiting down to one lane only each way off the bridge, creating huge congestion there. And it took pressure for months from the business community as well as our local residential communities. On the other hand, we are very pleased with the Safe Routes to School group, who've been very much in contact with us over the Rosemary Hill School and surrounding community to make our children and walkers safer. And it's a huge contrast, Director, between two different offices of your department. One communicates fully, openly, interactively, tries to work with the communities to get ideas, but imposes good standards of traffic control. The other ignores us, refuses to change what they do without letting us know, in fact, and gives us the feeling that we're literally unimportant. How can that be that under two different offices of your department? What can you do about it, sir?
Well, thanks for letting me know of it, first of all. Ironically, those two programs fall within the same office in our department. So it may be more specific to the individual staff rather than the management of that
Sir,
group.
they don't communicate horizontally with each other when working on the same streets. It's a siloed effect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that does occur, I will admit, between our divisions on different things where sometimes, particularly in the sidewalk arena, the Safe Routes to Schools program may be implementing some sidewalk and they, in a similar time frame, get a request. I apologize for the sirens, but Santa is traveling the neighborhood on a fire engine here tonight.
Not too much of a problem. The real problem is how do you get their heads together and get their heads together with us in a cooperative way? I mean, cooperative. Yeah.
Well, it really needs to come from us, me knowing about it and our leadership team knowing about it.
The executive knows about it.
So I have not heard, I've heard of the challenge with Littonsville Place. We actually had a discussion of it earlier this week, and sometimes it's that the challenge is hard to solve through an engineering intervention rather than people not wanting to solve it.
No, it's the misguided intervention, engineering intervention. They made mistakes due to lack of contact with either businesses or communities, and they had to redo the whole intersection, and they still didn't communicate with us. how bad can it get?
Okay. Well, this is, like I said, it's in the same group as the Safe Routes to Schools
Well,
program.
tell the leader of that group to bang some heads together.
I will.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you bringing it to my
But we
attention.
want to thank the Safe Routes to School group. They are fantastic. Upgrade them, please.
Gotcha.
Thank you, Joe.
I'd like to call on Daniel Kane. Or
Can you hear
David
me all
Kane.
right?
David Kane.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Director Conklin, Wade, thank you again for the presentation. It's always great chatting with you both about safety and particularly pedestrian safety around the Newport Mill area. Director Conklin, two flags for you, and then Wade, a question for you. Director Conklin, when I attended the Veers Mill BRT meeting a few weeks ago, the folks presenting actually didn't seem to be aware of the Albert Einstein Safe Route to Schools Walkshed study and weren't aware that Norris Drive is actually a frequent stop used by students. Could you just make sure that the folks on the other side who are working on BRT are aware and can use that study that you guys put so much effort into to ensure that they're actually factoring in the student traffic into that construction project?
Yes.
Okay. And then the second flag is there are some projects at the intersection of Connecticut Avenue and Denfeld where I think we'd asked for some crosswalks to be repainted, the pedestrian signals to be modified to allow more students to safely cross the street each day.
I've
I
seen
know,
that request. Yes.
yeah, I know you guys are busy. I'm just flagging a few. I know a couple people have asked me about it, so I'm just passing it along to you because I'm sure you'll get the question.
And I think our team did engage with State Highway Administration on that
Oh, great.
request as well. I don't know what the outcome is, but I can follow up on that.
Okay. And then Wade, for you, the question is the HIN, how often is that updated? Like how often are we updating the top 10 roadways? How often are we updating the streets that are subject to Vision Zero?
That's updated usually on a 5-year cycle. We're a little behind this cycle because we asked for a federal grant to do the update for the Vision Zero action plan, and they're stringing us along. It's been over a year and a half since we were awarded it, so they keep on telling me they were really close to getting it signed. So, but as part of the update process that will start in 26, they will update the high engine network based on all the kind of post-COVID years of 21 through 25.
Okay, because I do think that in our community, we would love to see the sections of Veers Mill Road and University Boulevard that have had recent pedestrian fatalities added to the HIN if possible, so they can start being focuses of different projects. But I understand you're waiting on grant money and you're waiting on some further support to do that. But just a flag for you. Otherwise, Director Conklin, Wade, I really appreciate the time and I appreciate the answers.
Great.
Jeff Griffith.
Thank you, Jerry. Question for Chris or Wade. I was especially interested in your testing of systems for the automated detection of traffic violations. We have a stop sign at an intersection that is a few hundred feet from our elementary school, and that stop sign is routinely ignored by many, many drivers. I have two quick questions. Could you have our intersection used as a test site for your technology to prove its value? And secondly, if it's possible, could you share with us who at the state legislature seems to be standing in the standing way of opposition to the use of automated detection systems, which seem to be quite promising?
So in terms of the stop sign, so the current bill that is being considered does not allow it only be in the cities of Tacoma Park, Gaithersburg, and Rockville. So if it's something that the county police would enforce against, that would still be illegal. I'll say that, not that automated enforcement is huge, fan favorite in Montgomery County. Is really not popular in Annapolis, so it takes a lot. But I think that is slowly changing, at least in the last couple of years, in terms of getting automated enforcement authorized. There's still a lot of skepticism of it and the value of it in Annapolis. So we try and bring them all the data and evidence, but there's always a lot of skepticism you have to win them over on, and making sure that you have all the guardrails in place. So for right now, the bill as introduced by the Montgomery County delegation will still only limit it to Tacoma Park, Gaithersburg, and Rockville cities.
So we couldn't be a test site.
That's correct. Yeah, because we would need a vendor in order to do the testing.
Thank you.
Joe Hawkins.
Hi, thanks for speaking with us tonight. My question's for Director Conklin on the 34 bus route on Ride-On, which was shortened back in the summer, so it ends Wheaton to Bethesda, not Friendship Heights. And right after that was announced, the Red Line announced that they're closing in July and August of next year, the three stations that are right along there. So Wheaton to Friendship Heights is an alternative way to get from one leg of the Red Line to the other, and Ride-On cut it out. The connection to, I think it's the D96, isn't really all that good. You can ride the Ride-On for free, and then you get to pay a fare for a short ride on WMATA or getting one to the Metro, but that won't even be an option for 2 months next summer. So it seemed like even if that's a longer term plan to have it shorten just Wheaton to Bethesda, it just seemed like incredibly bad timing for next year.
Yeah, we are working with MDOT, SHA, and Metro to come up with a mitigation plan for the Red Line shutdown next summer. I maybe should have mentioned that in the whole presentation, but one of the Purple Line projects is connecting the new Purple Line station in Bethesda to the Metro station, about 150 feet underground. And as part of that, there's a mezzanine being constructed in the Metro station. And that construction of that mezzanine is going to require that the Red Line be closed next summer. So this is a good thing for you to bring up now because we're about to initiate the planning for the summer bus operations to mitigate that closure, which is North Bethesda to Friendship Heights. I do recognize that change in those two routes impacted the riders in that area, not in a good way. But there was a need to balance the amount of service that the county was operating and Metro was operating. And with every change, there's hopefully more good than bad, but it's usually some of each. And in this case, that particular bus route is the bad end of that arrangement. There was a lot of other efficiency gained in other parts of the system and more service delivered with the same dollars, but this is a bad outcome, and it might be, as you suggested, something we need to try to resolve for the summer service disruption.
Right. And Parkwood Residents Association would be happy to work with you on that or, get data and opinions. One of the other points we made was a lot of people who live in the Wheaton area have jobs in the Bethesda, Chevy Chase, Friendship Heights area.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, really lengthens the commute for those folks. And I think the ridership was, pretty high on the 34.
Well, it's one of the only links between the two, except for the Metro itself.
Right.
Okay, I'll take that back with our team and make sure that I'm not committing that we'll do something this summer.
Sure.
At least it's in the mix of needs that we need to address.
Right. Thank you.
Yep.
I'd like to call on Ira Unger.
Hi, thanks for coming to the meeting tonight. I put a lot of questions on the chat. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at them.
Not in real time, no. I'm hoping that somebody's able to get them to us after the meeting so that we can respond to them.
So there are 4 civic associations right now along the University Boulevard corridor that have opposed the dedicated bus lanes. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about why you're putting them there and why there has been really no public engagement since they were implemented in February of 24. There was a recommendation that you made to SHA in December, but we had a press release back in November 23 saying that it would be evaluated and the recommendation would be made in December of this year, this month. I know you've talked to Delegate Cullison a little bit about this.
Yep.
Could you share some of that conversation with us?
Yeah, I sure can. So back in 2021, there was a pilot for bike lanes on University Boulevard. That pilot kind of showed that extra capacity of the third lanes wasn't really all that beneficial to the corridor. But there were a number of operational problems with the bike lane implementation. So we began looking at whether or not there were a better configuration for the road at that time.
I'm sorry. Let me just interrupt you. You said that it hadn't impeded traffic very much,
Correct.
the bike lanes,
Correct.
but
There were issues
my
that-
understanding is that 800 people from the community had written to DOT saying that it had impeded traffic, and in fact, it had impeded traffic. So, some of these things you're saying sound objective, but they're really subjective.
Well, as I mentioned, there were issues at a couple locations, particularly at Arcola Avenue with that pilot, where the separation for the bike lanes, which was physical with flex posts, did constrain the operation there. We began working at that point with Metro and Maryland SHA to look at whether or not it would be better served with bus lanes because it is a really high ridership bus corridor between College Park and Wheaton. And Metro identified that there were impacts to bus service from not having dedicated facility in that area. So we continued to advance that and did a fair amount of community engagement back before the lanes were initiated. We did talk that, yes, it was a pilot because we wanted to make sure that there weren't any show-stopping implications from those bus lanes. But the level of investment to make the bus lanes, put the bus lanes in was relatively large, so that the expectation was that we would keep those bus lanes if there weren't any sort of untenable impacts from them. As we progressed with that, we then, as you said, we communicated with State Highway Administration late last year, requesting that they be made permanent. We were seeing the travel time benefits for the bus. We're seeing relatively little impact to traffic flow.
Excuse me, let me just interrupt here. My understanding from looking at the data from your evaluation made in November of 24 was that the decrease in travel time for buses along the 2-mile strip, according to your numbers, was 35 seconds. Is that correct?
Well, I don't have this data in front of me. I'm not.
Well, it was 35 seconds, and the
debate.
increase in driver time was 20 seconds. So there were, pluses and minuses on both sides. But the overall picture is, of course, most people use cars, and I believe it's about 15 times more people are in cars rather than buses. So it actually slows down the traffic while improving it for 35 seconds along the 2-mile strip. It might actually delay bus passengers along the longer stretch if there's greater congestion at the lights, and the buses still have to stop at the lights when they're outside of those dedicated lanes.
Well, like I said, I don't have data on this in front of me, so I don't think this is a forum for point by point debate of this particular topic. Happy to engage with you at another time on this if you'd like.
Right. And could you, my understanding for what you're saying is that the reason for the dedicated lanes was to speed up bus travel, or was it to relieve congestion?
No, I never suggested it was to relieve congestion.
Okay.
There were two principal motivations for the pilot. One was to provide less impedance to bus travel on this corridor, so less friction with general traffic. The second was to create additional separation between the sidewalk and the travel lanes with general traffic in it to improve the safety of the sidewalk. There are other benefits with less traffic in the rightmost travel lane for cyclists. And we have seen some reduction in speed closer to the posted speed limit, so reduced speeding on this corridor, which also, as Wade discussed in his Vision Zero slides, the lower speed and less speed differential reduces the severity of crash outcomes when they happen. So those were the main objectives.
Let me address the pedestrian safety for a second, and this goes to Wade as well. We have needed on the University Boulevard corridor pedestrian safety for a long time. It's a very narrow sidewalk with right next to fast-moving traffic over 6 lanes. We had a meeting recently, and I suggested that the concrete barriers be put up that are only a few inches wide and a few feet tall, And that would really provide safety to pedestrians without removing a whole lane of traffic. Could you guys talk about that for a second?
How many millions of dollars do you got? It would be, we would have to probably look at either taking away that lane to make the space for it or taking people's property to make the space for it. So that's kind of would be tough to implement.
Well, the state DOT rep that was there said that it could be done without taking away a lane, and you could get a waiver on the few inches that it might take on the sidewalk without taking property. And
So
it
it's
just
definitely
seems
more
like
than a
it's
couple
been
inches.
sorely needed for a long time. There have been 2 deaths, on the street, and it would be a simple solution. I mean, you need a barrier between the sidewalk and the street, and building the concrete. It seems that it would do that. I mean, and it seems that those lives are worth the $1 million it would cost. I mean, how much would a concrete barrier cost?
I don't think anybody's estimated that. I mean, that would take an evaluation to understand where it would go
Yeah.
and what the implications in terms of right-of-way utilities are, plus the construction cost and the impact at all the driveways that are on that corridor, and whether or not it was impeding the ability to access those properties or creating site obstructions. So it's a fairly involved set of analyses to look into that.
We've done some analysis, I think, as part of estimating what the cost of some of the recommendations on the University Boulevard plan would be. Because obviously the sidewalks there are not what we want to have in our current day, but they're built under different era of priorities. So to build the buffer between the sidewalk and the current travel lanes and moving the utilities, there's a lot of utility poles on one side. It's at least 7 figures or more.
Right, but painting the lanes was $2 to $6 million. Anyway, I don't want to hog up all the time. Let move it on.
Thank you, Ira.
Okay, this is Jerry. I'm going to give a question from the chat website. I don't have it exactly correct. Is there a website available that will give the level of service at all the intersections that they normally measure level of service? Those are normally intersections that have traffic lights.
Not that I'm aware of.
They used to have it on again, some of them are waived now. We don't use level of service as a measurement, but this website from Montgomery Planning has some that they've put that in the chat. That shows you some of the level of service. Not always, not every intersection gets studied every year, but I think it's from when they have their latest data, either from a master plan or a developer project.
Yeah, this is not necessarily live data, though, Jerry. It's sort of static from whenever that review was done.
Okay, I'll give you another question that we've received. A major question is on the reconstruction of the American Legion Bridge, which is a state responsibility. But residents are asking, when will trucks and buses will be banned from using the bridge due to its deteriorating condition?
It's a good question. Again, state responsibility, so I don't have specific information on that. The information that we've heard from the state is the issue is more not so much the substructure, the load carrying components of the bridge, but the condition of the deck of the bridge, which is subject to the traffic wear and the salt intrusion and more rapid deterioration. So I don't know that there's an impending structural issue with the bridge. The bridge is of a very standard construction type with piers and beams. It's not one of these bridges that has a, intricate design. They do inspect the bridges on a very routine basis. So our bridge inspection routine is 2 years, and then when a bridge starts to become in a compromised condition, that inspection period decreases. So I'm sure that there would be sufficient notice, or not that there is sufficient notice because there's no alternative, but some lifespan before any truck restriction would be imposed. And I haven't heard anything about a trucking restriction being anything anybody's contemplated in the near term.
Okay, this is a question for Wade. Could all new purchases of county vehicles, including school buses, be equipped with the type of safety equipment that many passenger vehicles have had since 2019 that detect a pedestrian in front of a vehicle and apply the brakes automatically?
Yes and no. It's a little bit more trickier with school buses, just in terms of how they're regulated when they're purchased, and sometimes the technology that works for passenger cars isn't quite ready for prime time on a school bus. But for a lot of our passenger cars, some of them do have those kind of technologies. It depends on, especially for some of our electric vehicles that have been purchased for the light fleet, because those have a higher tier package, they will include some of those bells and whistles, including detection as well.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to go to Molly. I don't have a last name.
Thank you. My question's for Director Conklin. About the BRT, the county, when it's making plans for BRT on state roads, I think you mentioned the Veers Mill Road BRT, the Route 355 BRT. What's the process for is there state approval to get, and when does that happen?
Thanks for that question. So the BRT plan has been around for a long time, starting in the mid 2000s. It was formalized in 2013 in a countywide transit corridors functional master plan. Following that, there have been feasibility studies advanced on individual corridors. So those have, well, actually, I should back up. The first quarter was implemented on US 29. I think it went live in 2020. And obviously, there's state engagement on all of these. So we have technical working groups for each quarter, along with citizens advisory committees on each quarter, and public engagement that's open to anybody on each quarter. And as part of that, the state is involved in reviewing the preliminary ideas for each quarter and then the specific design plans and issues permits to the county to construct the facilities. We have a memorandum of understanding with the State Highway Administration where they have identified in-house resources to help us have those plans reviewed and advanced. And depending on the intricacy of the design, there may need to be maintenance agreements for different components of that right of way. The Veers Mill corridor doesn't have any of those highly unique elements to it. It's more of a standard lane sidewalk and bus shelter construction, so there's no unique maintenance requirements. But yes, we work in partnership with the State Highway Administration on this program. And when those studies start, they start with funding by the county council as part of the capital improvements program. So at this point, we've implemented a first phase of bus rapid transit on US 29. We've completed planning, design, and are starting construction on Veers Mill Road. We're at midway in the design process for 355, and alternative selections and planning studies are wrapping up on New Hampshire Avenue and the North Bethesda Transitway, which goes from Westfield, Montgomery to the North Bethesda Metro Station. And at the moment, we don't have any other planning studies funded. So that's the suite of projects that we've been working on.
And does the state usually just agree with what the county wants to do?
We spend a lot of time in state review and make a lot of revisions to the plans in coordination with the State Highway Administration.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I'd like to call on Sheldon Fishman.
Thank you for being here today. I really appreciate it. I live in Forest Glen neighborhood. The Forest Glen neighborhood is across the street, across Georgia Avenue from Forest Glen Metro, and a block from the Beltway. And there's going to be some efforts to do some traffic calming in my neighborhood. It's on the other side of the Forest Estates neighborhood is Sligo Creek Parkway. So that's why it's got all those forest names. And that's part of my question is there's an effort. There was a public hearing last week about putting in traffic calming, but the only thing they talked about was speed humps. And I guess I would ask you if you've mentioned some other alternatives earlier this evening, and I would hope that you could encourage the Department of Transportation to look at alternatives to speed humps. In particular, on one of the streets that's going to have traffic calming, now one of the streets is Forest Grove Street, and it has traffic circles that were put in 15 years ago that do, in fact, do some calming of the traffic. But I think you can do even better than traffic circles. And I guess my question is, can I ask you to encourage the staff at the Department of Transportation to think a little bit broader than 200 feet between speed humps?
Yeah,
And while I have the stage, one other
sure.
quick question. Um, you've talked a lot about projects and how long it takes to get projects planned, approved, and stuff like that. Well, years and years ago, a project was approved to put a pedestrian entrance under Georgia Avenue to the Forest Glen Metro stop. So all the planning is done. There's even a sign right on Georgia Avenue, but the sign has been there so long, for so many years, that it's faded. Again, I know Georgia Avenue is a state highway, but I'll be glad to give you a hammer to discuss it with them.
Let me respond to both of the suggestions you made. So, in terms of traffic calming, many traffic calming measures can be implemented without a laborious process. So, in your neighborhood, we can consider, curb extensions. We can consider other measures like that, and the circles you mentioned are a good one to control speed. And we can generally do those with some discussion with the immediately abutting properties. Speed humps have this public hearing because it's required under the regulatory process. So yes, that hearing and that discussion of speed humps is limited to that because of the way the regulation is framed. But that doesn't limit our ability to do other types of traffic calming in that community. So I'll be sure to talk with the staff about that particular neighborhood and that question. And then on the Forest Glen passageway project, that finished its planning around the 2013 timeframe too, and has been in our capital improvement program. We've finished the 35% design of that, but it has been delayed a couple times now by multiple years due to the limited fiscal capacity of the program. So it hasn't competed as effectively as some other projects. It was relying completely on county funding, where some of the things that we've been able to move have outside grant funding that have allowed them to move. So it's still in our program. It's still a project we're advancing, but it's been moving quite slowly due to the available funding to keep it going.
And of course, it's relevant to Vision Zero, because we call
Absolutely.
that intersection the intersection of death.
And actually, one of the things we've been discussing is, given the delay in that project, whether it might be possible to create a signalized crossing of Georgia Avenue, not at the intersection, because the intersection is fraught with the beltway ramps, turn restrictions, and just an overly complicated environment. But if we could maybe get a mid-block crossing, say 500, 750 feet further north from there, whether that would meet some of the need while this other project is advanced. So that I'm just saying that because that's a discussion we've had as recently as today about how to meet this need, given the other project's slow pace.
Okay, this is Jerry. I want to offer a little comment for everyone, which wasn't covered. If there's a problem, minor problem, like on a street that doesn't have a number, you can call 311 to report potholes. If there's a problem on a state highway, those are the numbered roads in the county, you can actually go to the State Highway Administration's website and report a problem, and they normally follow up on it. It's just a thing. I'd like to give you one other question. I received a question from Strathmore about the no right turn on red sign that blocks traffic entering the parking lot on Tuckerman Lane that goes into the WMATA parking lot, which is connected to the venue. maybe we could just change the sign of no right turn on red from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. or something like that. Can anything be done? Because that literally backs up across 355, which is, Rockville Pike gets blacked up because the people can't make the right turn into the parking lot. And there are very few pedestrians at that intersection.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jerry. The no turn on red restrictions that were applied in a blanket fashion were in response to law passed by the county council well over a year ago at this point that required them in certain designated areas of the county, so town centers, downtowns, at county controlled intersections. So this one was installed under the provision of that law that doesn't give us the flexibility to evaluate the congestion impacts of that. We have been in touch with Strathmore, have got their event schedule, have been completing observations at the recent events they've had. And if we are able to conclude, like you suggested, that it's causing a backup onto 355 and creating a greater hazard, then we do have the wherewithal to take it away. And we're in the process of doing that evaluation now.
Thank you. I'd like to call on Brenda Freeman.
Thank you. I really appreciated both of your presentations. My concern really deals with someone who takes the bus and who takes the bus to get to Metro. Now, the county council claimed that people could walk in my neighborhood, which is Woodside Park, down to down Dale to, what is that street there where the new line is? Is it Benton or whatever? I'm a little confused, but where the purple line is going to be on coming down Dale Drive. And also with
Wayne
the one,
Avenue?
thank you. And also Wayne, yes, I couldn't think of the name, but also with the one at the Metro station. Now, not everybody can walk that in 15 minutes. I know, because I know I can't do it. And the people that demonstrated the ability to do this were young people, like in their 20s, and they did not have, packages and whatever people have when they go to Metro, especially if they're going to go shopping or something. So that's a problem. And so I think it's unrealistic to expect people to walk that far. So one suggestion that I would make is that at one time on Dale Drive, there was a bus called the Ride On number 3. Of course, it went backwards at the time just to get us to the Metro. But if there's a possibility that we could have some kind of connecting bus, because there are already bus stops, there are places for people to sit down, that would really help.
Well, we do schedule and service adjustments 3 times a year for Ride On, and can definitely take a look at this. So you're on Dale Drive?
Yes, I'm on Dale Drive, and Dale Drive, the people would need it it would be from Georgia Avenue, or near there, all the way down to Wayne, because the other folks, I guess, can just get directly to the Metro from some other bus. But once you get into the neighborhood, and it also could be for adjacent neighborhoods where people could walk there. You mentioned also, you said the magic word to me, which is signalized crossing mid-block. Here is my experience. I was coming back from Metro, walking back from the major Metro there, Silver Spring. There is no stop after, I don't know, it's one stop away from Metro. Then the next stop would be on Rowan or some Dale Drive. So I said, let me cross the street. Where is that used to be the old former library, there's Silver Spring and Colesville. So I had to try to cross 7 lanes. Yeah, I don't know how many lanes there are. That can't be done. It seemed like 7, it may have been fewer, but
it's at least 6.
Is it 6?
I think it's 6.
And it was hot, so I just kept walking and walking until a bus finally came. But it wasn't near the closest stop, so it flew by. So I had to walk all the way and finally get to Dale Drive. Now, that is not realistic. It's
Yes.
just, but buses were passing. Of course, there was the big one, that BRT bus, the one that goes
The
directly
Flash.
to
Yep.
the Flash. Of course, that would not stop. You can't get on the Flash. And then other buses would. So it was, please think about signalized crossing mid-block at that point, because I don't think it would cost it. But you said it cost $300,000 to get a traffic light?
Three to 500,000.
What are you doing to put in a traffic light that makes it that expensive? I'm just curious.
Well, there's a lot of underground conduit that has to be constructed. There's deep foundations. They have to be able to withstand hurricane winds.
Oh, boy.
The equipment, you'd be surprised. Those traffic signals are as tall as a person if you stand next to them. They don't look big, but all that stuff is big. It's big, it's heavy, it has to be robust. They generally are built to last 30 or 40 years. So it ends up being expensive to build them. When I started my career, they were 100,000. Now they're 3 to 500,000.
Well, okay. Well, signalized wouldn't be that expensive, would it? I mean, that's a cheaper.
There are cheaper systems like Wade mentioned the pedestrian hybrid beacon is a little bit cheaper, but still you have the foundations in post. But it is important that we create more pedestrian crossing avenues. And although these things sound expensive, in the realm of construction activities, that's relatively affordable. Rebuilding these streets in their entirety is hundreds of millions, or if not even larger numbers.
Well, thank you. I have one question then, which would be very simple, I believe. It is so-called, I call it blocking the box on Dale Drive, where the cars come and they're trying to, they're crossing Dale. It's Dale and Colesville. There's always trucks, cars, everything that they just pull out. They should stop, but they don't. And so it makes an unsafe situation. Is there anything that can be done? I've tried to, what is it, major state highway people, and they always say something can be done, but I don't see much happening.
Wade, you may have better information on this than I do, but last time I engaged in this topic, I understood that the state did not have a don't block the box rule. The law here is not like that.
There's something, this did come up in legislation a couple of years ago. I wasn't following it too closely, but there's something weird about, there are places where SHA does have don't block the box markings. You'll see it on River Road coming out of the District of Columbia. But how it's enforced and how you can actually ticket it, there's something weird about that in the state of Maryland that hasn't really gotten fixed.
I think Maryland has a right to proceed rule rather than a don't block the box rule, if I'm remembering right. So you could paint that, put up a sign and give a ticket for not obeying an official traffic sign. But I don't think it's a fundamental violation of state law to block the box here. We can look into that further.
Well, just a question, because then it means people are blocked on Dale Drive. You've done a good deal on kind of changing the traffic's going in different directions. So at least you know when to get out of your driveway at certain times and you can enter. But that's an outstanding problem. So, well, thank you very much. I'm going to yield.
I'd like to call on Joe McDermott.
My question might not be really appropriate for either of you, but I'm hoping that one of you can address it. It was prompted in my mind by an earlier question. The bike lanes are the poles that separate them from the traffic lanes. It look like they're meant to be broken, and they're often broken. And so I wondered two things about them. One is what the design is intended to do when you have things like is snowfall and plows, and the other is maintenance issue where I've often seen the poles lying right across the bicycle lanes, which makes it incredibly hazardous for bikes. So that's a design question. I wondered if you could tell me what the plan was there.
So we generally are using the flex posts as an interim solution. So there were initially flex post bike lanes in downtown Silver Spring and Bethesda, and those were replaced with permanent construction over time. The flex posts have a rigid base that's attached to the pavement, usually screwed and glued to the pavement, and the flex post is attached to that base with a small screw, and it is designed to break away. It's a plastic material, so it may not create that much hazard to begin with, but if it were a rigid material, it could easily become a projectile or a spearing hazard if a car were to hit it and it were a rigid metal type structure. So it's designed to break off if it's struck. It's not designed to actually stop a vehicle by any means. It's just to prevent somebody from purposely taking advantage of that space to get around some hazard. And they do have a high maintenance cycle and a high maintenance requirement. Hopefully, if somebody sees one laying in a bike lane and obstructs it, they think of their fellow resident and maybe move it to the side. But yeah, it can create a hazard in that environment, but it's a lower hazard than if it were to be struck and either spear a vehicle or fly from that vehicle and cause some other type of damage. And it's not, they're useful and they have their place, but it's not a type of treatment we necessarily want to have everywhere because of that maintenance requirement over time. And they're not the most attractive looking feature. And aesthetics isn't the top of the priority chain for transportation, but we try not to make things purposefully ugly.
You just we haven't really had a challenge with a lot of snowfall yet, but I do wonder
Yeah,
what's
they
going to
stay
happen.
in place and we plow on either side. And we've actually intervened on some of the state facilities where the plowing routine didn't happen the way it should have. And we do have smaller equipment that we can use for those. But over time, as there's more and more of those facilities, we'll have more and more need for specialized equipment.
Thank you.
I have one question that was sent to me. Do we have an adequate stormwater drains which were built for the 10-year rain, since we're now getting the 100-year rain frequently?
The answer to that question is they're adequate for the 10-year rain, and that's what they're designed for. But if that's not what we're getting, then they're not going to convey that water for a more frequent, heavier storm. You'd probably be interested, Jerry, and whomever gave you the question, be interested in looking at that Sligo Creek flood hazard analysis because it looks at the rainfall that we've been experiencing on a more typical basis and identifies areas that are subject to flooding there that are not part of that 10-year storm. So there are facilities that aren't designed even for that 10-year storm, and those will overtop even more frequently in this increased rainfall intensity that we've experienced with the change in the climate. It's not something that can be addressed in a short period of time or even really all that effectively. You can only fight Mother Nature so much. But what was a 10-year storm is probably not a 10-year storm anymore. So that design isn't going to keep the flooding at that level.
I'd like to call on Daniel Major.
I would like to ask your agency to reevaluate, reconsider the elimination of a travel lane on Wayne Avenue from George Avenue to Colesville, which happens to be in front of what used to be Discovery, where they had already installed a dedicated bike lane and a dedicated pedestrian sidewalk. And so as a result, now the 3 lanes, one is now consumed by this external unnecessary bike lane, and the second one is consumed by the buses that now have to pick up passengers further out. And so there's just this traffic jam that's unnecessary, since Discovery went through all the trouble to abide by all these regulations. So why narrow Wayne Avenue unnecessarily for that purpose? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Chris Reynolds.
Hey, sorry, I got here late, and if there was a question already, I apologize for missing it. My question is about the Flash bus on 29 Colesville. It's great. It's fantastic. Thank you so much for it. I've got some neighbors who would be very interested in getting a stop added to that route at Sligo Creek Parkway. There's not much of a stop near our neighborhood at all. The nearest ones are either downtown Silver Spring or all the way out past the Beltway by Blair High School. And so there's kind of a big dead zone where you can't catch the bus there in the middle. I know when it was initially being proposed, they were looking at potentially putting a stop at Franklin, but I'm just kind of curious, would a stop at Sligo Creek Parkway be a total non-starter for any particular reason, or is that something that, neighbors could do some advocacy on and maybe eventually see happen? Just curious. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. You're right. We did evaluate a Franklin Avenue stop. It's no longer in the preliminary plan. It was too challenging to fit it in with property constraints and grades. I agree. It's a very long stretch from Fenton Street to Four Corners and doesn't serve that neighborhood well. There are other buses that do. And if you're interested in that stop, like I said, we're finishing up the 35% design now for a phase 2 project. And I think we'd be happy to have another stop between Fenton Street and the Beltway if one could fit somewhere. I don't know if it fits at Sligo Creek Parkway or not. I know there's probably some parkland impacts that make it harder to do something there than there might be at other places, but there's generally not right of way anywhere along that stretch of Colesville Road, and the grades are challenging, and that's why it's not there, but certainly like to fit one in if we can.
Good to hear. Thanks. Yeah, it is tight. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I'd like to call on Alan Bowser.
Thank you, gentlemen, for being with us. This is kind of a lightning round thing. I mean, there's lots of substance here. One of the concerns in our neighborhood was all the trees that were cut down for the Purple Line construction along Wayne Avenue. And I know there are neighbors who are concerned about all the trees that were cut down for the Capitol Crescent trail. To what extent are you going to get involved in sort of the reforestation and improving the tree canopy where state projects are involved? So that'll be the first one on trees. And the other one I would ask is this, as you mentioned, Chris, at the beginning of your presentation, the Civic Federation for a long time has been in favor of free ride-on. And I was wondering whether or not you'd seen any increase in ridership with free ride-on, because it's something that people talk about all the time. So trees and free ride-on.
So trees related to Purple Line construction, I've got to imagine that's been discussed and there's a plan, but I don't know what it is. So I'll follow up with our Purple Line team to understand how that tree replacement is expected to work, because I don't know off the top of my head. In terms of free ride-on and ridership bump, we've seen tremendous ridership recovery and growth over the last year, sort of medium single-digit growth year month over month. We have seen a small increment related to fare free since July. We're still working through the data analysis on exactly what it is. It's a little hard to tell and to isolate that because we made a bunch of other system changes at the same time. And we know the effect of fare free is on the ridership is going to be relatively modest because it was essentially free before it was free. We weren't aggressively enforcing it. It was low, and we had most people not paying before we implemented it free to begin with. So it won't be a tremendous, point in time change, but we have seen lots and lots of ridership growth over the last year.
Thank you very much. And let me just add on with another question. Lots of us on this call are really interested in affordable housing. And I know that a bunch of RFPs had gone out for affordable housing projects for your parking garages. And I wonder what kind of success, kind of response you've got for those RFPs. Is that something that's really happening, or is it really more aspirational at this point?
I think the market for housing development is challenged by a lot of factors, but we had issued RFPs probably a year or so ago for several parking lot district properties. We did get a fair amount of response to those, and there's some potential projects, particularly in downtown Silver Spring, that are continuing to advance. So that's a good thing. There's interest in some of the Montgomery Hills properties. We've got some challenges with some grant-funded EV charging that's making those harder to move forward. Some of the ones that are more market-driven seem to be stalled, and those are more in the Bethesda area. So there's still progress on those, but it's not as quick as we would like.
Well, thank you very much.
Are there any other questions? And before any other questions, I want to mention one thing. There are people in this county who are not aware that ride-on is free, and there are people in this county who are not aware that WMATA buses are free for senior citizens if they get a pass, which you could get even in the public libraries in Montgomery County. Can this be publicized?
We do our best to market that within the modest marketing budget we have, Jerry. At the time of the Fare Free initiative, we did recommend additional funds for communication of the new fare policy, and those weren't approved. So we're doing the best we can, but have a very, very small communications budget for the scale of the ride-on system.
Are there any other questions?
Jerry, Bruce has his hand up.
Well, go ahead.
Bruce, unmute and ask your question.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. I have three comments. First, I would like you to accept the proposition that the people who know the best about the roads and streets are the people who use them every day. And I'd like to associate myself with Mr. Teitelbaum's remarks because I've lived in Montgomery County since 1978. Before that, I lived in DC for 30 years. And there are a lot of things that are being proposed that I disagree with. There are a lot of things that I do agree with. And my remark specifically came out of the fact that 2 years ago, a little bit more than 2 years ago, I came home one day and here's some county employees putting posts in the ground with no parking on my small residential street, which ends in a cul-de-sac. And I called your office and had a very nice discussion with one of the supervisors who admitted that you don't do a lot of outreach. And it seems to me that if you want to avoid controversy, you just have to promise to communicate with the residents of the streets and areas affected before you do anything. I'll leave it at that. My major comments concern two incidents that occurred personally to me last year. One involved a truck that was in front of me, had ladders on the roof, and the ladders came off, didn't hit me, but hit another truck. There was no police around. The other happened just about 8 weeks ago, where a truck intentionally ran me off of University Boulevard. Again, no police were around. The police will not do anything, and they're prohibited under law from doing anything unless they actually witness these sorts of things. It seems to me that to improve enforcement, and the police are overburdened as they are, and they're understaffed. I think they're about down 200 positions in Montgomery County. We ought to allow dash cam footage from individual automobiles to serve as some sort of prima facie evidence for the police to conduct an investigation. And I know that's a state problem that will have to be solved at the state level, but you should add that to all the other efforts you're making at the state level. And the second thing, it seems to me, is if the police can't do the enforcement, then perhaps, and I know budgets are tight, perhaps we should have something else called a traffic enforcement officer, which would be paid less than the police officers. They wouldn't necessarily have to be armed, but they could, in unmarked cars, go out and just travel along the major roadways and give citations when warranted.
Bruce, I just want to, on your first points, I don't disagree with you at all. And I do think things go better when you know the community sentiment about a proposed measure before you try to do it. There are instances where our staff goes and posts things that are essentially making notice of the existing law. And even that can be inflammatory if it's not done in a way that engages the community. So I appreciate that. We don't always follow our own advice and do that the right way. But fundamentally, the leadership of this department agrees with your view on that. And then on the question of enforcement, it's a tricky thing. The answer has been to try to go with more and more automated measures, because the issue with these stops and the type of force that you talked about is that oftentimes you're perceived as police and people react like you're police. And if there's some other illegal activity, that person is not equipped to deal with it. So we do have civilian enforcement for parking, for example, and those folks have a lot of training about how to not get into conflict over issuing parking tickets. But that's not in an environment where you're on a roadside in a more hazardous environment, in a more one-on-one condition with somebody that you've tried to stop for a violation. So it's very difficult to find the right sweet spot for how to do traffic enforcement, and understanding equity issues, people's personal privacy and freedoms, and being effective in maintaining safety and good behavior on the road system. And I think the best success we've had was with the automated programs that are run by police to try to normalize the most extreme behavior and use those non-criminal citations to take care of that. But enforcement is a big component of Wade's program. He works with the police as much as he does with DOT. And we can do all the engineering we want, but if people are using the infrastructure irresponsibly, it's going to be unsafe.
Well, I agree with you. And it just seems to me that all the automated measures in the world are unlikely to catch somebody who's weaving, someone who's taken drugs or alcohol, those sorts of things. Someone who's overly angry, they woke up on the wrong side of the bed. That's why I suggested dash cam footage. I mean, it's factual. It doesn't lie. And I think that's something that should be looked at the state level.
And I will add into your comments about, a special force. So one of the things that we did, is around pre and then into COVID, was we moved a lot of our district traffic complaint officers into a central unit, and that's what they do is they go around to the major roads as well as the high entry network roads, and they're largely responsible for doing the enforcement throughout all the 6 police districts, focusing on those violations that lead to serious injuries and crashes, as well as making sure that they do school zones and those kind of major corridors. So are they there every day? No, but there's trying to do the best they can with the limited resources. As you mentioned, there's quite a significant staffing shortage right now, but the traffic stops are starting to recover in terms of the number of stops that are being made in the county. So we hope to build back some of that deterrent effect.
Well, if there are no other questions, I'd like to thank Chris Conklin and Wade Holland. I apologize to you, Chris. You got most of the questions, but I guess most people are involved with traffic, either as pedestrians or drivers or just observers in other vehicles. I thank you both for all your time, and we appreciate this.
Great, thank you. And if somebody can capture the chat activity and send it to us, that would be appreciated.
We'll get that to you tomorrow morning.
Great.
Have a good night, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll leave for the rest of your business if that's all right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah.
Alan, are there any announcements that anyone wants to make?
No, thank you all for joining us this evening. We are going to send the questions from the chat to DOT, and we hope they'll get back. We'll post them on our Facebook page and somehow otherwise distribute them. Other than that, wishing you all the best for the holidays. And as Cheryl Gannon reminds us, we're going to have an in-person social gathering on Sunday, January 11th at a place to be determined. So thank you very much. And Sheldon, yes, we will distribute the slides. So thank you for that suggestion and reminder. So
Okay, good night.
Good night, everybody. How about a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, guys. See you next time.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Right.